Hey there, it's Hungry Boy. And I wanted to talk about life drawing today, and I wanted to do it in an honest and emotional way because it meant so much to me back when I was a teenager in the days before, well, everything went pear shaped. And it really helps anybody who wants to become a real comic book artist in ways that I'll talk about. But today we're going to be talking first up about the most pragmatic aspect of life drawing in the way that it helps somebody, particularly Zoomers who, wow, I mean, the Zoomers I've met here in Australia, amazing work ethic and amazing care of other people, working two jobs, sometimes two and a half jobs, and then on the weekends looking after their grandparents during this real time of trouble we're all facing around the world. So I have respect for the Zoomers. Anybody else? Well, you pays your money, you takes your chances. Pragmatic benefit number one. Most people don't realize this because of modern day semblances of life drawing at salons, which are really not salons and they're really not life drawing. But in real life drawing classes, when they were the proper life drawing classes and they were structured and they were disciplined, you would start out in your first week doing 10-second, then 20-second, then 30-second, leading up to a minute at most sketches. And you were expected to get all of that human figure down in a recognizable form in a set amount of time. And the instructor would actually say, pencils down, stop drawing. So you quickly learned to work on, and this is most important in comic books, a deadline. This was important in the 60s. It was important in the 70s, although, oh boy, the amount of deadlines that were broken in the 70s, oh. It was really important in the 80s because the 80s is when we started getting royalties. And although it was super important in the 90s, in the 90s, Image Comics didn't care. They were notorious for breaking deadline. Now, who were the people notorious for breaking deadline? The people who had not done life drawing. So if you're in a real life drawing class, and I don't know if those are being offered now, it's hard to find any in my neck of the woods down here in the Antipodes, otherwise known as Australia, but I'm sure they have to be out there somewhere. And they are a very structured, very disciplined environment. And by the time you get to the second month, you're working on 2-minute sketches, you're working on 5-minute sketches, and then it bumps up to 10. And eventually what happens is you are doing an hour sketch with a very difficult pose. And coming into that class as a little wannabe comic book artist, you would be thinking, I can't possibly do this without, 6 hours. But what you learn via the structure and the support and discipline can be a support. With the support of the class, you learn that what you thought you could only do in 3 or 4 hours, you can do in 1 hour, particularly when you are in competition with other people, when you are around 20 other students who are all trying to do the same thing, and you are thinking to yourself, I do not want to look bad in comparison to these people. I like these people. I'm having coffee with these people after class. I'm sometimes enjoying lunch with them. I'm talking about comic books and other illustration, Charles Dana Gibson. I'm talking about Boris Frazetta with these people. I'm talking about Frank Frazetta. Sorry, Boris Vallejo. Oh, that was a slip. Boris Vallejo. Boris Vallejo and Frank Frazetta and Gil Kane and a whole bunch of other people. And sometimes the teachers even know who these great comic book artists like Gil Kane were. They know. And they will help you to get there. They will help you to become a better artist, but also get things done in time. And some people in the current comic book marketplace might say, but why does that matter? I mean, if we're being told we should go to Indiegogo and do our own work and do it in our own time frame and not work for Marvel or DC or Dark Horse, etc., why should we worry about a time frame, about a deadline? Well, the answer is very simple. The distributors are going to demand a deadline of you, even if you're doing your own work, even if you're doing something that is not involving the distributors, even if you were doing something via Indiegogo or any other crowdfunding source. When you set up that campaign, you are making promises to people, and you are promising to give them a certain amount of material in a set amount of time, and that is no different to a deadline that was given to anybody working at Marvel in the 80s or DC in the 80s, or to myself for a whole bunch of other companies. All right? There will always be a deadline, because the moment you promise something, you got to give it. Unlike people doing current iterations of science fiction and fantasy. Well, that's enough for today. Part 2 tomorrow. Love to all the clobberers. Bye-bye.